Behold! The sword of power. Excalibur.
Computer. That should do it. And now I'm just going to assume that that's going to work.
Great. Let's just do the thing.
That's my plan.
I didn't do an outline for today. We are going to leave all this in, obviously, because we're loose today. I'm not drinking because I do have to go back to working on my chapter about dick jokes and Harvey Birdman after this recording.
Which is very important.
I have to be sober to formulate the best dick puns possible for the writing of that paper.
I am editing a book. I'm just going to drink this.
It's going to be a good book.
Well, I'm not doing anything. Are we recording this? Is this part of the show?
Well, yeah, I guess so. I'll do a little intro, but yeah, go ahead. Give your context.
I am like literally trying to and I'm 4 days after when I said I'd be done when I would have chosen them, but I'm still trying to narrow down submissions, abstract submissions I had told myself that I was going to get I wanted to have at least 12. I wanted to have at most 18. I am now down to 21, and that's more than
close.
And I think I might hit 20 and be like, it's just going to be a long book. But we are very much in the it's a good problem to have. I have enough submissions to. Legitimately, I could do 3 books if I wanted to. I've got a lot of abstracts. And so it's just like, oh, okay. That's a lot. And that's a good problem to have, I guess. It's better than trying to, go, oh, I hate all these. What am I going to do? No, it's that I like them all. So if you're listening to this later and you didn't and you don't get chosen, it's because this was painstakingly aggravating trying to get through all of them because I cannot. So that's where I'm at.
Anyway, welcome to the Oh Gosh, Oh Golly, Oh Wow podcast, the podcast where we talk about the Marvel Comics series Excalibur every week for 126 plus weeks. We're on a plus week because we're doing our annual holiday special. We debated whether to do one. Nice shirt, Mab. I did notice. I am wearing my snicked shirt, which is off camera. Sadly, I feel like I always wear a cool shirt for these holiday specials, and it always gets lost to my cropping of my spot. But yes, this is our annual holiday special. As I said, we debated whether to do one, but you sent us a ton of fun questions, so we had to get together and answer those and celebrate the season and also give ourselves time to decide what we're doing for the final 4 episodes. So, it's a win-win-win. We'll figure it out. Let's just take a week off. I am Dr. Anna Papard. I always forget that there's going to be an audio version of this, so we might as well introduce ourselves because you're not seeing our lovely faces if you're just listening to it on your podcatcher. You know what the stuff that I do, sexy, gendery stuff. I was already talking about dick jokes and Harvey Birdman. That pretty much tells you all you need to know about me, plus my very unofficial job as Kurt Wagner's PR manager, which aligns with those other interests pretty well. Mav, give us a little introduction for this year's holiday special.
I'm Father Christmas.
Clearly.
Hi, my name is Christopher Maverick. You can call me Mav. I'm doing great. This is I don't remember what order we've recorded to what hasn't come out yet. But like I'm done with grading, so my life's going great, other than the thing at the beginning where
Oh,
it's like
yeah.
where it's like, hey, I'm struggling to figure out which of these essays I want to accept. But that's actually a fun problem. So but yeah, I co-host this show and another show called Vox Popcast. I'm a teaching assistant professor of digital narrative and interactive design. My title is way too long. I do
So long,
I
man.
it really is like really I just want to be like I teach cultural studies, which would be like way simpler and like more accurate to what I do. But like they, just they want us to have like, have your title in your signature. And I'm like, but it's really long. Teaching for like even my rank, teaching assistant professor, that's way too many words, and no one knows what it means. And it's like, and it sounds wrong. That's weird academic problems. But yeah, beyond that, I'm
I
on
know.
Christmas holiday. Like I'm taking a break from decorating my tree to do this because the tree's been up. People know the tree's been up, but my wife, the tree's been up since since right after Thanksgiving. But my wife and I tend to put our decorations on literally the week before Christmas. Sometimes Christmas Eve we do
All
it.
right.
Well, we used to
All
do
right.
so I used to have a party. It's where from I used to like do this thing where I'd either me or one of my old roommates, one of us would invite everybody over to the house, whichever house we were living in. And we'd have like a tree decorating party where every year, because I don't have kids, so there's no like tradition or anything. So every year I would just buy like a whole bunch of very generic blank ornaments, and then I'd invite all my friends over, and we'd get drunk and we'd decorate ornaments, and that's what that would be my tree decoration that
Oh,
year. Yeah,
that's fun.
that was like my big Christmas tradition. And then COVID happened, so we just haven't been doing that. And and now so now it's like, oh, like I think like so Andrew, you've got kids, so probably you decorated your
Yeah.
tree like I don't know, in October sometime. Yeah, at some point you did you did a
It's been a
tree.
while.
Yeah. Yeah. Whereas us, it's like, oh, there's a tree. We're, middle aged. You want to do that today? No, maybe tomorrow. Well, maybe, so it's a lot of that. So we'll probably work on that tonight.
I had a big productivity day when my dad had knee surgery last week, and I was waiting around for him all day, and I was really stressed out. So I got home and I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna go cut down a Christmas tree. So I did. I went out in the field, cut
Awesome.
down a Christmas tree, sawed it down. Well, I had to pick a saw. That was
Mhm.
important. I don't know anything
Sweet
about
saw.
saws.
Sweet
So
saw.
I picked the saw with the best name. It was Razor Saw. So I
Awesome.
took my razor saw, went out there, cut down a tree, and then I was just like, I'll decorate it later. And then I was like, I'm still waiting for him. So I just decorated it. And then it was 4 p.m. and I was still waiting for him, and they ended up keeping him at the hospital. So, it was fine. He's fine. He's fine.
That's awesome. Yeah. Can I
Yeah.
just cross over pitch my other show real quick? We like 3 weeks ago, I think, maybe 4, I lose track. We did a whole episode on Christmas trees and Christmas tree traditions. And we talked about the difference between so there's 4 of us on that other show, and very much in 4 different corners of the United States. And one of the people, Monica, who's been on this show, Monica is an LA girl. So she was like, just astounded by the very notion that anyone might chop down a Christmas tree. And so just as a crossover, just like it's like, here you go. There's not even going to a Christmas tree farm. You just went out back with an axe, is what you're saying, or a saw.
I have many spare trees, and I cut down a juniper tree, which is the most garbage of garbage trees. So the wilderness is not going to miss it. Anyway, Andrew, we need to get to your introduction. We've barely heard you so far. How are you doing on this eve of the holidays, or maybe your holidays are already begun? Where are you at?
I'm good. The kids have one more day of school and then 2 weeks with the kids, which is delightful, but tiring sometimes, but really lovely. Yeah, so no, that's gonna be nice. My productivity thing this week, I outlined a sequel to the Claremont Run book that I've been planning for like 6 months, which is really fun, and it's called The Claremont Kink, and I'm excited to actually start writing it.
I was hoping it would just be somebody else. It'd be like instead of the Claremont Run, it would just be like, the DeFalco
The
run.
Rob run.
It'd be like 4 issues.
Scott Lobdell.
Lobdell he had a good 2 or 3 years on X-Men, I think, didn't he?
Oh yeah. He was there for quite a while.
Yeah, he had I mean, not 16, but he had a reasonable sides.
Oh my God, Andrew, that's so exciting. Not
you.
content to rest on your laurels as a
know
best-selling
what those
comic
are.
studies author. Well,
Isn't a
that's a
laurel
Christmas
like
present to all of us, Andrew, so thank you.
Yeah, isn't a laurel like that little leaves that you put around your head?
I thought it was like the back of like a blazer.
I don't know.
Like
Let
something
us
that
know in the
dangles
comments.
low.
I mean laurels
I'm not
I know
classy.
like laurels are like shrubbery, but it's like the crown that Caesar wears.
Yeah,
Like
that's
Yeah.
definitely one laurel. I don't know which
It
is
was an
the one
honor-
in
yeah,
the
okay.
expression.
neither do I have no
That's
idea.
that's probably what it is, and I'm probably thinking of something stupid.
I don't know though, because it doesn't make sense. Why would you rest on like the tails on the back of your jacket make more sense? Yeah, we're all English majors. Can you tell? Literally, none of us know this thing about.
Given how much time we've devoted to this question, surely we can devote a solid hour to all of the excellent questions
Sure.
that we have from our listeners. We're also going to draw names for some prizes. Andrew has very graciously offered to give away a copy of his aforementioned best-selling book, The Claremont Run, hard to get since it's sold out some places, including our country, possibly, but just go to the University of Texas website, see whether they've got copies. Do go out and buy a copy
Digital, yeah.
on Vulture's list of Christmas gift ideas, and as Andrew just said, available digitally. Always available
Can I
digitally.
stuff the ballot box?
We
actually-
are not entered to
yeah,
win copies.
Well again I got my free copy from my review copy where they were like, do you want to? Sure, I'll review this book.
I mean, I got a copy from Andrew by doing any academic or, anybody
Oh,
writing
yeah.
about stuff, should just do this as a technique. I want to cite you in a thing. Would you be able to send me a copy of your book so that I can do so?
Mhm.
Works every time.
Narcissism.
Naturally. So yeah, we will be drawing for some prizes later. We're giving away Andrew's book, and I'll make you a t-shirt for the second prize.
Yay.
Always happy to make folks a t-shirt. So yeah, we'll get to that a little bit later, but let's start off with some questions. We got some fun ones, we got some serious ones. I don't know that we're going to get to everybody's question, but we'll get to a bunch of them, go for about an hour, and just see how we do, give you the content, as it were. We are going to start out with what I feel like should be a very easy to answer question, but I am curious about whether we'll all give the same answer. Christian S. On Blue Sky would like to know which character had the best costume throughout the run of Excalibur. I'm assuming we're doing the whole run since we're almost at the end. So
The whole
any
run and
costumes that have
any
been
character.
featured, any character, any costume. I'm not limiting it.
Okay.
Andrew, you're biting your lips, so you can go first.
In terms of endurance, in terms of a costume that's still somehow relevant today, I think you have to give it to Kurt. It's an iconic design by Dave Cockrum. Everyone knows it. It's widely associated with that character. It's the costume that anyone would picture thinking of that character. So yeah, I think he kind of takes it.
It's such a strange costume to have endured for so long.
Yeah.
I often have mixed feelings about it depending on how people draw it. Always love that it's an arrow on his crotch. Way to go, Dave. That was a good choice. I love the white gloves. Great for articulating his hands and feet. You can't ever get rid of that. The shoulder things, I don't know. I could take or leave them depending on how people draw them. But yeah, right where we're at in the run, he's of course gone back to the classic costume. And yeah, we'll be seeing whether he goes back to the classic costume as X-Men gets back to basics in their relaunch in July of 2024, which the internet is having feelings about.
But they're correct to have feelings about that.
But we won't get sidetracked by that. Mav, best costume.
Of the people who qualify as actual members of Excalibur, I'm actually not going to pick probably what anybody thinks I would pick. I would say it's a tie between Megan and Megan. I actually like both of Megan's when drawn correctly. Like I don't need her to be wandering around like completely naked. Like I think they overdo the third costume. I don't care for the orange costume. I mean, it's fine, but it's just clothes. It was just like this is the thing that she wears. Whereas the green M costume that she gets during Cross Time Caper and the costume that she's currently wearing in the run, which is sort of a green jacket. That is sort of I like those a lot. I like the green M costume because it just feels very her. I like the I like that she has thumb gloves on on it,
So good. The
which I
dream.
yeah, which I love, and she also has them on her feet, which is just, or at least the
Yeah.
way Davis drew it, which I just thought it was adorable. And I love that she has like it just sort of fits the aesthetic of what I think of that character being. And if you're going to update a costume to 90s-ify it, I think Megan's 90s costume is a clinic in how to do that correctly. I hate Kurt's. Kitty's, I think I've said before, I'm actually more okay with Kitty's 90s costume than most people, but because it's an X-Men costume. It's just, it's just the X-Men uniform. Um, but I don't care for Brian's 90s costume. I don't care for I don't care for a lot of them, but I think that across all Marvel, hey, we're going to do the young blood thing, that like became like the standard for the industry for a good decade. She's one of my very favorites. So those two costumes stand out for me.
I was Megan's costume, the green costume, was high on my list too. I like that it captures sort of the essence of the character. Like she is a very feminine character, but she's got a tomboyishness to her as well, like because she is this bruiser character. And I feel like that costume really captures that. It's like a costume that I would like to wear.
Mhm.
A costume that I would not particularly like to wear, but which I thought was going to be the obvious choice for everybody, is Rachel's red costume. I thought
All
that's what
about it.
everybody would choose. No?
Don't like it.
Because I mean,
I've never
ah,
liked it.
hmm,
Love the character. I've
yeah.
always I mean, I understand the narrative reason for it. Just always thought it looked stupid.
Mm,
I thought it looked stupid back then. I mean, like it works as her villainous slave costume because it's supposed to
mhm,
be the slave costume. It doesn't work as it's not aesthetically pleasing bondage gear to me as an artist. Like I
Mm.
could have done it like I like that it has no zippers. I like the like all the narrative reasons behind it like sort of make sense. But as far as a aesthetic fun to draw, I find like it might be the least favorite of Rachel Summers costumes that I can think of that she's ever had.
Wow.
I would rather draw her if I'm gonna just kind of be sketching her. I will sketch her in the purple leotard before I will do that. And that's not and I don't love that costume either. That's stupid looking. But like I think it's more interesting than the leather bondage suit. I now on the other hand, like I really love her Marvel Girl costume, the green and yellow one that she wears much later. I love that. I love her current costume as Prestige. I love a lot of Rachel costumes. This is probably one of my least favorite of hers. I
Wow,
love her
shots
Asgardian Wars
fired.
costume. Her Asgardian Wars Phoenix
Yeah,
costume is great.
sure.
I don't
What's
know.
the
For
defense,
me,
Anna?
Mhm.
well, for me, I mean, like you said, all the narrative reasons, which we've talked about on the podcast ad nauseum, so I won't go over them again. But I don't know, in terms of iconicness, in terms of like you can see, just a little snippet of that costume and know who that is,
Mhm.
and it's like
Yeah,
got the good thing, the the Coogan thing of like the superhero costume of like, it expresses the biography of the character, that's that narrative reason again. And
Sure.
like, yeah, to me, it's like it's got all of that, it's just when I think about some of those iconic images of, Rachel fighting, I want to say like iconic images of Rachel fighting Necrom. I don't think a lot of people remember the fight with Necrom, but if you like
Mm.
read those comics and see those pages, the pages themselves are iconic just in terms of their visual representation. So like, yeah,
Wait, you're
to me,
talking about
that's her.
her Dark Phoenix costume, not her Hound costume.
Oh, I'm confusing the two because the Necrom pages are the Dark
Yeah,
Phoenix
or the Dark
costume.
Phoenix
yeah.
You're
costume.
right. No,
But
I
yeah,
am
that's
talking
great.
about the Red. I'm talking about the Red Spikes costume. I am
Oh,
confusing the
okay.
two. So that's
Okay.
on me. That's
Okay.
on me. So maybe that's a point
Hmm.
in a
I
knock
love
against my choice
yeah,
since I'm
I love the
confusing
Dark Phoenix
images.
costume, but that's, not just hers.
No, I know. I don't
Yeah.
like it as much
Hmm.
because it's not just hers. It looks great, but
Hmm.
like anyway. Anyway, we're going to do another style question, and then we'll do a more substantive question, mix them up a little bit. And this is a Rachel question, which this question is from Alice Crowell, and it is, what other superhero could pull off Rachel Summers' Excalibur era haircut?
Harley Quinn comes to mind immediately.
Oh, Interesting.
Huh.
There are not that many like ladies with short haircuts in
No.
superhero comics, and the times that they have done them, I mean, they don't draw them well a lot of the time. It's just like I think about like when they tried to give Dazzler that short haircut, and I'm like, for one, I just didn't think it suited that character. It just wasn't. I got what they were trying to do, but I wasn't nuts about that look for that character, who I feel like is very femme coded. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was thinking of other members of Excalibur. I was like thinking in my head, I was giving each of the members of Excalibur the racial haircut, and I was like, I think that they would all look good, except that Brian would look very much like a wrestler, which may or may not be a good look for him, depending on your taste.
I saw that question and I thought, okay, so this is and this might be just showing my age because I was I was a teenager reading these books at the time, and the answer is I was there for the 90s and everyone had it. Everyone had that costume. It was the mullet. It was the hairstyle of the gods. And like and at one point, Rachel and Sue Storm were drawn identically.
Yeah, it's true.
Just the one's hair was blonde and one's
Oh,
hair was red.
yeah.
And hated it for Sue Storm. Doesn't work for her. One of the problems is it's not the way mullets were drawn in the late 80s or early 90s in the comic style doesn't look like a real mullet. It is like the simplification of the artwork, even if you're going to go, squiggly line Jim Lee style, even if you're going to go but the simplification of the artwork doesn't look like a realistic mullet. So it doesn't even look like a Billy Ray Cyrus mullet. It looks like this weird, even more butch than I think the real short haircut is going for, a less gendered a androgynous look, and it doesn't even do that in a comic in the comic sense. So it works for Rachel in a way, for me at least, that it didn't for Dazzler, who had that haircut. It didn't work at all for Sue Storm when she had that haircut. It didn't work for who else? A bunch of people had it. I think Storm had it briefly, but in a transitional, trying to grow her hair back out from the mohawk to the like in the Mark Silvestri age. Like there were, so I think lots of people tried it. Kitty definitely had it. Art Adams tried to do it with Kitty, and again in the Asgardian Wars era, it's trying to be the Rain Sinclair look. It worked best for Rachel, is the answer.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't draw comics, but I just like I've had many short haircuts. I've had a shaved head. I've had all of the haircuts, but I just like I don't know. Like big hair is funner to draw, isn't it? I mean,
Yes.
I feel like that's why when they do the mullets, sometimes they end up getting all flowy at the bottom because it's just like you want to draw the hair for the motion. Superman's mullet just gets more and more intense on
Oh,
the
yeah.
bottom because you got to have that hair flowing. I don't know. It's a tough dynamic.
It's cape logic. It's like, why does Batman of all people who absolutely should not have a cape realistically has a monstrous billowing thing, and it's because it's to express the action of the character, and you just particularly when you're using the simplified cartoony art style, that's better with more stuff to draw. So
I know. I feel that way about like Carol Danvers' hair because like as much as like I like the idea of giving that character shorter hair, she's a flying character and it's hard to resist the allure of drawing long hair for a flying character.
It's
So I
why
go
she
both
needs
ways
the
on it.
sash. It's why she needs the sash, right? Like why
True.
why does she have a sash on all of her costumes? Because you want something to go flappy when she's flying by.
You need it. All right, here's a more substantive question for us. And I think this is a really good question and it got me thinking a lot. So Just Medic on Blue Sky Social asks us, as we near the end of the series and you can look back on all the guests and conversations, was there any particular guest or conversation that significantly changed your perspective of that particular issue? This is a good question.
Good question.
I know, because I feel like this is something that we've sort of revisited on other holiday specials. If you guys want a moment to think, I have an answer, and then I'll let you do
Yeah, no,
yours.
please.
Yeah.
I was thinking that our conversation, because we've had Quentin Harrison on the podcast a couple of times, but we had him on for Carlos Pacheco issue, and Yeah, I've really been thinking a lot about his affection that he had for that era of Megan because, like, we've gone really hard on not liking Megan in the post-Davis era,
Hmm.
but he talked a lot about finding a lot of inspiration in her character, her
Mhm.
combination of like sort of like soft femininity and power, and how he was really drawn to that. And I really have tried to keep that in mind when I'm thinking about the character. I mean, there are just some things that have happened to her in the Rob era that have just been so misogynist that I can't. But I
Right.
have been trying to keep that in mind in terms of like, keeping the complexity of gazes and interpretations in mind. So Quentin, I carry your interpretation of Megan in my heart and want to believe in that version of the character. And it really made me think about it a little bit
Mhm.
more than I think I had been.
Hmm. I think I'm maybe a safe answer, but I thought Stephanie Burt brought a lot of perspective to the end of Alan Davis's run, that things that I hadn't considered as much in terms of representational politics in that era, and that made me appreciate a run that I don't think I did appreciate enough the first time that it came out.
Good answer. Good answer. That's still one of our most popular episodes. Our
Oh,
episode
nice.
on, I think, Excalibur 67, I think. We talked about queer temporality and all kinds
Yeah.
of wonderful things. Always a delight to hear Stephanie talk about anything. Friend of the pod, Stephanie Birch, who went viral recently for her Taylor Swift course at Harvard.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh, is that
That's awesome.
hers?
Mhm.
I don't know that I saw, I mean, I didn't make the connection. I mean, it's weird because I know Stephanie and I saw people talking about the Taylor Swift course, but I guess I never paid attention to who was actually teaching it. That's cool.
That's Stephanie's course.
That's
Ab-
that's kind of awesome.
It
So
is
Mhm.
awesome, I know.
yeah. Huh.
I feel like all the folks that know her have been just like basking in like the, oh, I know that person-ness of that as they're
Mhm.
like talking
Yeah.
about it on CNN and stuff. Anyway,
No,
Mav,
that's great.
yeah,
Oh no, just
sorry.
that. Yeah, I'm just still. I was like, wow. I don't think I ever noticed them actually say the name of the professor of the class. I'm like, wow, I do know her. That's awesome. um, I'm okay, so this is going to come up several times because I am notoriously bad at picking favorite anything. Hence the thing earlier about like how hard it's to narrow down and edit this book. Um, the one that stands out in my mind right now, and I might have said this before because we've talked about this in previous episodes. Um, I like I don't remember which issue of it is, but it's one of the issues of Girl School from Heck when we had Valentine on
Oh, yeah.
and Girl School from Heck is not my favorite storyline. It's fine. Part of me has always like it's just like I've never gotten why everyone else loved it so much. Whereas I like it's not like I hate it. It's not like I was never like, oh, this is awful. I was just like, oh, this is kind of weird. And I think my big problem with it has always been I always felt that Kitty was separated from the rest of the team way too long, and it got she to an extent that it got annoying, and then nothing comes of it at the end, right? Like the ending of the
Mhm.
story is just she's back. Oh, and her powers work now, and let's just forget everything. And so that always irritated me. But then having Valentine on the show, and then just her entire discourse around the jacket, I was
Mhm.
like, okay,
Jacket
you
Gate.
you got me on the because it gave me something to sort of hang on to with
Mhm.
that storyline, and that made me enjoy it more than I otherwise would have. So that's a so in the spirit of what was actually asked in the question, that's one where it's not like I said, it's not that like I changed my mind to where I'm like, oh my God, this is my favorite issue, or because I don't, and it's also not like I hated it before and now I like it now. I was kind of indifferent now, and then it became it's much more that I enjoyed the conversation than anything else, which I think is what I actually look for. I mean, this is a I don't it sounds like a cop out answer, but that's like sort of why one becomes a professional English major is because like I love having a conversation about something even if it's not my favorite thing. I love the insight of
Mhm.
listening
Yeah.
to somebody explain why they love it. So that I think, you know, that moment, particularly her pure glee at just tracking from panel to panel who has it. I was like, okay, gotcha. All right, I understand. This is why we love a visual medium, and that's kind of how I felt there. So that I think would be my answer.
All-time episode. We love you, Valentine. Okay, this is a fun one, which I'm choosing to interpret in a certain way. So Dweller in Darkness on Blue Sky asks, this is a series with a lot of almost romances where characters chat, flirt, and maybe get a little physical, but never consummate. What relationship would you like to have seen right on the page? And full disclosure, I did interpret this as like, which characters do you want to see fucking on panel? I'm not sure if that's what the intent was or whether it was just like you want to see them like in a relationship. So you could take it in whatever direction you want. I am gonna use host privilege to say I would have liked a sexy scene between Kurt and Cerise. I want to know what's going on there. I want to know who's in what position, who's on top, and who's doing what. I have many versions of it in my mind. But yeah, I would have liked Alan Davis to draw something a bit unclothed and sexy between those two, and we didn't get it. And I long for it. Maybe someday. I'll pay him a lot of money to draw it for me. How about the two of you? Any that you could take that in whatever direction you want. You don't have to take it in the direction that I did.
I have to think about it a little bit because I have to interpret it both ways now because I very much interpreted it the other way when I read through the questions earlier. So Andrew, you can go first if you want.
Sure. I don't know if this is too obvious for me. I would say Colossus and Megan. Like the idea that Megan would get to have, call it a revenge dalliance or you fucking abandoned me after getting engaged to me dalliance. I kind of like that. And the way that the story was written was very much as if they did have a dalliance, except they actually canonically didn't. So seeing that actually play out, seeing Megan get to be with another lumpy guy who this time doesn't condescend and patronize her, except he kind of does. I think that could be kind of really.
I guess she's into that.
Yeah, oh I think that would make the Brian reunion much more interesting too. It would create that conflict. I don't know. Again, in representing Claremont, I always talk about he tortures his characters. He makes them do the unthinkable things, and then kind of gives them a chance to redeem themselves. And I feel a lot of writers will go close to that cliff, but not quite jump off it. And Rob was real close with that Megan Colossus relationship. So I would have liked to have seen that become canonical.
I'm still thinking about my interpretation of the question, and I'm like, ooh, she could like shift into metal, and like they would both be metal and have metal sex. And
but
I was
that
like,
would take
is that
away
sexy
from the
or not?
importance of the Kurt one, right? Wouldn't it be stealing its thunder?
I guess so, but I'll allow it because my B choice, again, just thinking about the sexual implications, was that I would like to see Rain and Douglock in a sexual situation because there's a lot of interesting textures involved. And I would enjoy seeing that. Anyway, Mav, do you have an answer to that one?
Yeah. I'll answer it both ways because I initially interpreted it as, who should have gotten the chance to actually, explore a relationship, not the physical carnal. I just want to see them draw it because I interpreted it as a what would they have done? What could they have done in the world of Marvel code approved comics more so than because those are two very different questions. So for that, anything that is an interesting story that like I will take any. I've never been one for shipping my own thing. I want to see what you do and do something interesting. And the aborted one that like could have always been explored that I actually always found interesting was there's a point, and it's more in X-Men, but Excalibur had a chance to take this up and it doesn't. There's a point where Piotr and Betsy are into each other in X-Men that like sort of in the Outback series that they're building a relationship and then we just have to do a reboot and like go through the Siege Perilous, and so it just never happens. But it was always a fascinating relationship to me that I really wanted to see them explore more. So that's like a relationship that I want to see. As for seeing the the usage of the powers, this becomes a much more interesting question because since Marvel never does it, I have done a lot of research for various projects into, porn comics. A lot of it's fandom online. There's porn comics and also porn videos. I know Anna and I have talked, I don't know, we talked about it on the show, but we've talked between us about the work of like Axel Braun, who is this pornographer who basically makes parodies of Marvel and DC comics, and where he just his, hey, let me make my version of this character of this famous scene from the comics, and then they have sex. But the sex is always very boring in Braun's cases because he said himself he's not really interested in it. He's interested in doing his take on superheroes, and it's like, in order to get away with it, it's like, okay, now I guess sex happens, whatever. Somebody else directed, I don't care. But then I compare that to there's a fandom writer named Tracy Scops that if you wanna do some not safe for work Googling, look at the work of Tracy Scops, who writes a lot of porn parodies of mostly Marvel, some DC stuff. Very good work, and often comes up with very inventive uses of super sex. So because in my head I'm still, a 13-year-old boy who fell in love with a 13-year-old girl named Ilyana Rasputin, pretty much any pairing with her, in Excalibur world, because of where the characters were in Excalibur, I wish she and Kitty had that moment. To where I would have absolutely totally been all about that. And if someone drew that today, I'd be like, yeah, I guess I got to read this. Yep. Yep. I guess that's where I'm at. But beyond that, any interesting usage of powers, like the thing that Anna was just saying about the metal skin of Colossus, like that fascinates me, right? Like it always makes me think whenever somebody does, like if you're looking at like Archive of Our Own, one of the most common things in this era is always Rachel Summers stuff. And there's two ways you can do it. You can just write a boring sex scene where Rachel is there, or you can make full use of telekinesis, which you absolutely need to make full use of telekinesis. So like, I want to see, it doesn't really matter who, I just want to see you try to do interesting things with powers.
That is very fair. And I'm still thinking about some of those possibilities, but I'll try not to be too distracted because we don't need that. Oh, we have so many good ones. I'm trying to think about which ones would be our best ones. All right, I'm gonna do I don't know how to pronounce this Twitter handle, but it's XDP Chris. XDP Chris. Yep, that's correct. Who I know has been following the podcast for a while. Each of our favorite pencilers on Excalibur who is not Alan Davis. We've had a lot of not Alan Davis for a long time now. So this should be a question that we've had a chance to think about. We've had so many really good artists do some of their worst work on Excalibur, which is fun. I mean, go ahead, Andrew. No, you go ahead. I'm curious whether you're going to give the same answer as me.
So I thought LaRocca, because I enjoyed watching him develop, but he wasn't good yet, but I enjoyed the development. But in terms of a similarly young experimental artist who was good out the gate, I would say Joe Mad.
Okay.
His issues were delightful. They were really, really good.
That's a good choice. That's a good choice. How about you, Mav?
I was trying to decide between those two, so whichever one Andrew doesn't want to be his, that would be mine. I mean, like I said, I'm horrible at favorites, right? Like, who's your favorite artist on Excalibur? Well, I've said several times, like I'm a huge Ron Lim fan. I'm a huge Strowman fan. I'm a huge Marshall Rogers fan. All three of them have done Excalibur and did not particularly like any of their work on this book. So it's like, is the question who's my favorite artist? Well, it's one of those three. Is it who did interesting work on Excalibur? I guess between Joe Mads and Pacheco, I think Pacheco was doing more interesting stuff, but neither of them, like, I think in both cases, I like seeing what this person was and going, there's something there. That kid has a future. And then fast forwarding 15 years and being like, I was right. Like, yeah, I don't know. Like, I think that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I got to go Pacheco. I mean, he defines that second year of Excalibur for me. So much so that I thought he did so many more issues than he did. It
It's
was
like
a
6
shock
or
for
7,
me.
isn't it?
I know,
Yeah.
it was a shock for me
It's
going
like-
back, and it was like, oh, it was this few issues.
Yeah.
Like a ton of these ones that I thought were Pacheco were actually Joe Casey, and I was like,
Mhm.
oh, that is surprising, because when I think about that era and I think about affection that I have for that era, I think of the Pacheco issues because, yeah, I mean, I think it's the only. I like the Joe Mad issues a lot too. That was a good pick. I think I was thinking more recently than that, so I didn't think of it, but that'd be my second choice. But yeah, if there's somebody that I wish could have stayed on that book for a little bit longer and really
Mhm.
defined the look of it, that would have been nice to have more Pacheco.
Mhm.
Where do we want to go next? Okay, how about this one? Victor on Twitter asks us, he had a couple of good questions, so we'll see if we get to both of them. What issues in the whole run were the hardest to review?
That's easy.
Yeah,
Is it?
I think Mav should go first.
I mean,
Go.
it's easy. Well, the hardest to review is easily Weird War 3, which is why we didn't do it. We just I mean, it's not, and I know, and I mean, so behind the scenes, we voted and it was unanimous. We just didn't want, like, we just literally was like, do we want to do? So if you're wondering, we all hate it. It's awful. It's uncomfortable. I have nothing redeeming to say about it. So we were just like, well, we could skip it, and so we did, so that was, for me, it's not even a question. That was the easiest one. I think, you probably sort of expect, if you listen to our show, you would expect me to say things like, like we've talked about this. Prometheum Exchange is like my least favorite comic ever, but I very much enjoyed doing Prometheum Exchange on the show, because the only thing that's redeeming about that series for me was sort of discussing it with people and listening to people have, and I mean, I know I did the bit where I was like defiantly not discussing it when we recorded those shows, but that was a bit. Like, I actually thoroughly enjoyed those conversations. So like that wasn't hard at all. That was actually quite fun, because I also didn't feel the need to try and dress it up or say that I liked anything. Like, it was a relief to just be like, no, this is garbage, and I'm just going to say it's garbage. I would totally rather review a really bad comic over a mediocre one,
Right.
with the exception of Weird War 3, which is just, there's no
Hmm.
reason, there's nothing redeeming, and so I saw no reason to go back to that.
Yeah, I was, when I was trying to pick ones, I was like, ooh, it's the mediocre ones that are a struggle, because you're just like, there's just nothing, because like I like to try to find a guest who has a bit of a hook with the issue, and when it's just there's not something in the issue that I can really identify as a hook, that becomes really weird. But also got a cheat answer for it, and then I'm going to come back to you, Andrew, which is that the hardest episodes to book are 122 and 123, because we're right at the end, and I
Yes.
have folks who want to come on, but it's a challenge because it's like, well, we only have a few episodes left, and I want to make sure that we're sort of, it's hard dropping, because I do like the dynamic that we've had in some earlier episodes, dropping somebody in that sort of doesn't know X-Men or doesn't know Excalibur, but at this point I feel like we need to do a lot of reflecting because we're so close to the end, and just dropping someone in, it's not really a good time. And then you're like, do we want to go for like quote unquote big name guests, whatever that means, or do we want to like, anyway, I think we're going to end up having just some of our good friends on and have a nice fun time toward the end, but we'll see how that turns out. But yeah, I've really been struggling to figure out
Mhm.
what to do for our final few. But Andrew, do you have a response to this one? Which was the hardest for you?
I think for me the hardest were the sort of episodes immediately after Claremont left, and the episodes immediately after Davis left the second time, just because you get that sense of like loss. And Mav's pointed this out, and he's 100% right. It's unfair to be evaluating someone else's comics after they've replaced Alan Davis, after a writer's replaced Chris Claremont. Yeah, and just that sense of the air having left the room, I thought was really kind of heavy, and as a scholar, it made the job really challenging. And I don't even think I handled it well, and I do think I was too hard on Lobdell and Pete Wisdom and a few other key things in our podcast.
All right, this question is from our friend Joe Dorowski, and it's relevant to what you've been up to this week, Mav. So, This one is
Joe or is it
based on.
John?
Oh, it's John. Who did I
Yep.
say? Did I
You
say
said
Joe?
Joe.
This is
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
from John.
I was
Sorry.
did Joe ask one too? I'm like, I thought, yeah, I knew John
Joe
asked
did not. This was John. Sorry, John.
Mhm.
So this one is based, says John, on Mav's current project. Who is the best Excalibur supporting character? Or,
Oh.
as we are all academics, who would you most want to write an essay about? I believe inspired by your
Yeah,
Batman, not
Batman
Batman collection of marginal supporting characters. It's a good question
Yeah.
because we have a lot of them.
There's a lot.
Mhm.
It's
I, so
good.
I was gonna say I'm torn on the twins. Like I don't know if it's Alisand or Alistair that I would be most interested in writing on.
Mm.
Alisand for potential, Alistair for execution, but I think
Uh-huh.
Alisand had more potential that wasn't realized.
Alysanne is a more interesting character.
Yeah.
She's not actually in Excalibur all that much.
Right.
The things that we remember her being interesting for actually happen in X-Men, and it's in 4 issues. Like
Yeah.
she's not she only has like a dozen extant issues of comics, like total.
Yeah. Gritty
And
But
death too.
she and Amanda became mermaids together, and she wanted to do it again so badly.
Maybe in heaven.
yeah.
Mm. What do you think, Mav? You got an answer to this one?
Yeah, well, again, I'm horrible at picking favorites. I think that I think if we're asking which supporting character is, I think, most a part of the book, I think the answer is Moira, even especially at the end. But even
Mm.
before that, she comes back several times, and I think, but like, I don't know that I have an interesting Excalibur essay in me because John asked it as as a scholar. I don't have anything interesting to say about her in Excalibur
Mm.
as a supporting character. I think she's more interesting in pretty much everywhere else she ever is. Um it would be it would be for me, I think, either Di Thomas, who we have not seen in a long, long time. And I think there's a lot of interesting hooks that go into what that character is or wants to be, positioning Excalibur during that era, or to go a very, very different way. It's going to blow everybody's mind. Rory Campbell?
Why? How
Because
do you defend that?
I am not going to defend it. If you're doing it, if you're doing it as an essay, as an academic essay, I
You could
think
write a
that
whole essay
I
about like continuity and like
well,
failures of shared universe.
yeah, I think so much went wrong. I think
Yeah.
I think Rory is a he's a picture of trying to just fix a retcon by jamming another retcon
Mhm.
in, and just because Ahab again was supposed to be Cable at one point, and then you make
Right.
him Rory, and then it's just like there's so much of a let's just do this 90s thing, and then we will set up the gross relationship between him and Rachel if she's destined to become his slave, and then we'll just kill her off. So then nothing, like literally everything about that character is fascinating. Nothing's good, but it's fascinating. And that's kind of why I probably, so John knows this since he asked the question. John like has done books where his adapting Superman book, he was like, "What do you want?" And I was like, "I take Smallville because I want the challenge. It's literally the longest Superman thing that's ever been done in another media, and I
Mm.
did all of it." And then his most recent book, which is, I guess I can say this, it's not out yet, but the book that's coming out, I wrote a chapter on The Gifted, an X-Men spinoff that no one cares about except me. And I was like, let's talk about this. And I went deep because I was very invested in that. So I like the challenge of essays like that. I mean,
Mhm.
that's hence the entire point of, hey, let's do a whole collection on minor supporting characters, because I want to make everybody do the kinds of things that I like, which is the weird stuff.
Oh my goodness. I love that I went last because my answer has changed 3 separate times. But Widget,
Widget.
as a character, what does this literal widget, you know,
Mhm.
sort of do for
Mm.
our plot and push it forward, and then like the transformation into Kitty. There is a lot there. But my other answer was going to be, because Andrew got me thinking about it, and I don't know that I've mentioned it on the pod before, so on the off chance that I haven't mentioned it, Alistair Stewart interests me for sexuality reasons. As we discussed, he has the most sexually explicit panel in the comic during the Cross Time Caper.
Mhm.
And also, friend of the pod, Margaret Galvan, go check out her book, her new book, Invisible Archives, which is awesome. But Margaret sent me, when she was doing research for that book, a fanzine. I think I can talk about this. It's the kind of thing where it's like, because it was in an archive, like I can't tweet it or anything because, you know, it's, you know, copyrighted, owned by the person who created it. But I think I can talk about it. She sent me like a fanzine, like from the 90s, that is like, you know, a porn thing based in Excalibur world. That's Alistair and Kurt from like a queer fanzine, and somebody had done this, and
Mhm.
like just the fact that that exists and
Mhm.
that somebody was putting those characters together and was like intrigued by those bodies and their context, and like not in like an X-Men fanzine, like in a queer fanzine, they were like,
Sure.
this is what I want to put in this space. So like I feel like I could write a lot about that on its own. So yeah, that's a dream that probably won't be realized. And I'm sorry that I can't share that with the internet, but I assure you it's fabulous. Maybe one of us will get into the archive to do that at some day. Well, I can certainly, I might have already sent it to you guys privately, but I don't remember. If not, and you want to see this, you know how to reach me. Um, okay, let's see. We've got time for a few more. What would be a good one?
You
All
mentioned
right,
widget.
well,
Well, while you're looking, I was just
mhm,
you mentioned widget as your sort of your
mhm.
just this is a weird, and there's no way for us to know. So this is one of those things where that we don't do a lot on our shows, but it's just weird speculation. Do you think they meant for widget to be Kitty at the beginning?
Mm. I mean, I feel like we talked about this at the time,
I don't think so at all.
and yeah, like it's funny because it works in terms of her always having a connection with Widget, which
Yeah.
that becomes interesting in retrospect, but it doesn't quite work.
Right.
Like, yeah, yeah.
Okay. I just like I
I
just
don't
it
know.
just it was always a like I like even when we reviewed it here, it's just like and I know it's coming, and it's just going. Yeah, it just still doesn't make as much sense as I think they it's like, oh, okay. It never it always like I never really had a like I never had a question of who Widget is in while reading it. It doesn't feel like a mystery where you're like, oh my God, who is Widget? Where did he come from? I was perfectly fine the entire time with, no, you made Widget by cramming a couple of mechanical things together, and Tweedledope just goes spunk robot. Okay, that was
Yeah.
I was fine with that being the origin. So
It wasn't something that really bothered me either. I mean, I do like that, presuming it's a retcon though, like, because like I often thought back to some of those early scenes with Widget and like Kitty working on Widget and everything, and it's just like, oh, the tragic, dark context that brings to those
yeah,
scenes when you know that is really striking. And
yeah.
like again, it does add something to that. So I
Hmm.
mean, I
But
like
it's
it
something
for
that's
that reason.
unrealized.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Because once you find out who Kitty is, I mean, who Widget is, Widget leaves the storyline. Like there's no like
Yeah.
it's not like there you go, oh, now we know, and now let's explore the weirdness of having two Kate Prides at different points in her lifetime, on this team at the same time. No, Widget's just gone. So
All right, this one I think is going to have an obvious answer, because the item that is the obvious answer to this is included in the Comics XF gift guide, which you can find at the Comics XF website. My one and only Adam Rick wants to know, since Banff dolls got super creepy, which, that's neither here nor there. I don't know if I completely agree with you there, Adam. What should the next plush toy the Excalibur crew exchanges be? I really feel like the obvious answer is Lockheed,
it's
and there
Lockheed.
is a
Yeah.
Lockheed plush
Yeah.
that,
It's
just
cute.
came out in time for
Mhm.
Christmas this year, which is adorable. I had to strongly resist the urge to buy one. But does anybody have a different answer for that, or are we united on that front?
No, it's lucky.
Yeah.
Not a little plush Pete Wisdom in your life? I mean, you could stick pins in it.
Or you could just dye your John Constantine doll. That would work too.
Amazing.
Can we do the Pete Wisdom question? The least favorite character.
Oh yeah, we can. Who
'Cause,
submitted that one?
let
Was
me
it
see.
Dan?
Yeah, I think it's Dan because he says break your heart if I say wisdom, so that would make sense if it was Dan.
Ah, yes. Dan Grote, our dear friend, asks, which member of Excalibur worked the least for each of you? Please
Yes.
keep in mind,
Yes.
I will cry if you say Pete Wisdom. And my answer isn't Pete Wisdom.
Mine
Dan,
either.
so-
Like he
Mine
said
either.
that. I have a very obvious one, and it wasn't Pete Wisdom. We might have complained again, but it's the same thing. It's like there's value in being a character that I have
I
a
was
negative opinion on.
excited when he joined the book. You go back to those episodes. We did the
Mhm.
one with Liz Large where we were reading the
Yeah.
fan fiction and talking about Pete Wisdom nipple play. I was there. I was
I agree.
excited.
Oh wow, the Pete Wisdom yeah, when we were that was fun.
Yeah.
Because that was where I started Googling it live on the air. That was
Great.
that was great.
So
Yeah,
we've had our moments with Pete. He's not my answer either. But anyway, go ahead, Matt.
Not
What's
at
your
all.
answer?
Oh, it's easily Micromax. Not even close. There's no point. Not because what we said earlier, like I would rather talk about something I hate than something I am completely indifferent to.
Yeah.
Micromax, okay, without looking it up, I defy you to think of anything that he actually did the entire time he was on the team. How many issues was it? Why? What was it like? It is literally a entirely forgetful. What's his real name? 3 people with PhDs in comics who've been doing
I do not remember. Earnestly don't remember.
Who've literally been doing for the last 3 years a whole podcast about this book. Can't remember his name. I know he's a DJ.
It's not even like I don't remember. Like I remember the DJ thing. It's not even like I don't remember. It's like, you know, when there's information that you like are antagonistic towards, like if like I don't have space in my head for this, I refuse to learn it. It's like when my dad is trying to teach me how the furnace works, and I'm just like, I don't care. I just want to know whether I have to call the furnace company to fix it. And he's like, no, let me get you out a diagram. I was like, no, I'm defiantly not going to learn this. And that's how I feel about Micromax's name. I know he has a name, and I'm defiantly not going to ever learn it.
There's like in our house when we pay bills, like what happens, we'll pay bills and then I will just leave them in the middle of the floor, and my wife will say, well, they go in the filing cabinet, and I say, I don't know where, and she says, let me show you for the 50th time. It's like, no, I don't want you to show me, because then you will expect me to put them away, whereas instead I can just be a child and leave them in the middle of the floor, and then you'll take care of me. And she hates that.
Weaponized incompetence.
But like
I was
but it
taught
works
that by
because I
Calvin
don't know where they go.
comic, so yeah, it's a good strategy.
I don't know where they are. It's like I feel as though there are other things where like I think we've talked about like this. I have a whole smart home thing going on, ecosystem where I can control lights and stuff. I live in Forge's house, as Andrew has said.
Wonderful plaza.
Yes, but if I die, Steph can't work our house. It's
gonna be in your house.
Yeah, like, good luck locking the door because our I have biometric locks on my front door. I mean, like I've gone all out, and that's my job. She knows where bills go. I don't know where that goes. I have no idea. I'll give you my bank account number if I don't have to deal with it.
Nice.
I'm sure we're all like that about something.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew, do you have I don't remember what the specific wording was, a most useless character from this one?
I think it's a really weird situation in Excalibur, because when you're in a group book, you introduce new characters, they take you into new genres, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I noticed in Excalibur related to what Mav says is that they kept introducing characters who took them into a new genre, and then a writer left and they didn't want to do that genre anymore. So like Micromax has the potential to bring you into that sort of subversive Alan Moore territory, sort of undermining the concept of the superhero. And Scott Lobdell's not doing that. And then Farron comes along and he brings you back into the mystical, the sort of Merlin and Roman mythology. And Rob doesn't want to do that. So I think one of the things that stands out for me, to maybe Dan's question a little bit, is they were sincere with Pete Wisdom. Ellis comes in, gives you Fox Mulder, and goes into the alien spy genre, and they stayed in it for a pretty decent amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that's I mean, why I find these characters useless. It's not the fault of the character, it's the fault of the direction of the book. And why I think Pete Wisdom is by no means the worst character, because they pursued him, man. They let him take the book in his direction for quite a while.
I believe that the most useless. But did you answer then? You said it's not Pete, but did you have a
Micromax,
useless?
Farron, honestly, even Douglock, because he brings you into the techno sort of cyberpunk world, and didn't really explore it either.
Yeah, Douglock, I feel like, is our most underused character, if that had been the question, because we just keep talking about the potential of that character, and it just never gets where we want it to go.
I think Douglock at least had a storyline, and Farron had a storyline. I honestly don't know why Micromax was there. Like, I think they just didn't get to it, and that's why I picked him over the two of them.
I think that's fair. I'm gonna go Chaos. Do we remember Chaos from Excalibur
Oh,
Annual?
wow.
Remember?
Okay,
Andrew,
nice.
you might not have been here. You might have
I
missed
do remember
that
the
one.
character though.
Yeah.
Chaos with a
Remembers
K.
Chaos.
Sure.
The 90s.
Has a trading card, as I recall.
But again, respect. It was that writer's D&D character put into a comic book, so respect. I think we have time for a couple more, and they're going to be sort of retrospective ones, and then we'll get to our prize draw. So I feel like we've talked about this before, but I'm going to do a variation of it. So JW on Twitter asked us for our single favorite issues from the entire run. And I think that we've visited. I know these are all favorite
questions. I can't do these.
Mav. I'm so sorry.
I'm so bad at this.
But I'm gonna modify that one too. Like, we can do favorite issues from the whole run, but I think also it would be interesting to do favorite issues, like a favorite issue from the post Davis era, because it's no secret that we've liked that era less. So, like, I mean, my favorite Excalibur issue is Excalibur 43. We talked about that at length when we covered it, so that's not a surprise. But I wanted to also pick a post Davis favorite issue, and it is going to be Excalibur number 98, which is Ellis and Pacheco. It's the one where they go to the base, and it's just like a lot of explosions, and they blow a lot of shit up, and it's just really well executed and well drawn. And we talked a lot about that when we talked about the issue. And for my post Davis pick, it's that one. I feel like it's the issue where some of what I would have wanted to see from Excalibur paid off in a way that it didn't do in the supposed climax of Ellis's kind of story arc, because it just didn't come together as well. But that particular issue, just solid issue, all 20 whatever pages. So yeah, the two of you can take it in either direction. If you have a favorite post Davis one, or if you have a favorite any point in the run one. What do you think, Andrew?
It's Mojo Mayhem, of course, for best issue ever. I still think that's one of the most brilliant pieces of subversive pop art in comics history, which is a big statement. And then after Davis, I don't know, they kind of blur together in my head a little bit, but I would say early Pacheco issues I really liked. Again, just the vibrancy of the art. And we talked about it in terms of Excalibur being an elite book in the Marvel universe again. That was really lovely to see. And there was a lot of high drama happening. There was a lot of big feelings and emotions. Yeah, so even Pacheco's first or second issue on the series, I think were standout.
Yeah, I think you're picking the same issue as me, basically.
Am I really? Is it the exact? Okay. Well, there you go.
I'm so bad at this. So because Andrew took Mojo Mayhem.
No, you can too. We can
oh my god.
Absolutely. Wow. No, absolutely. But I mean, absolutely love Mojo Mayhem. We talked about that at length. Sword is Drawn, the original. I love as far as which is, the and I've also said this before. If I have to pick a top 10 list or even a top 1 list, don't ask me again in 5 minutes, because I will not give you the same answer. Sometimes I'm doing a top 10 and I've changed my mind on 10, 9, 8 by the time I get to the 3, 2, 1. So like I'm flighty like that. But right now, the one that's standing out of my mind, and I was just looking, is Excalibur number 92. And everybody's like, what is that? Excalibur number 92 is the issue where Piotr joins the team, or not joins the team. It's where he shows up and he beats the ever living crap out of Pete Wisdom.
Good choice.
And he's wrong. And he's and it is what I like about it is not the fight, because I've said this before. The fight doesn't make any sense. Pete Wisdom should be dead. There's no Pete Wisdom is a flesh and blood human being of a man who, has laser finger powers. Like Colossus is a truck. And if a truck punches you in the face, you should die. That's how it's that's how it's supposed to happen. He is a semi that went to your face. So that doesn't make sense that he lived, but okay that he lived. What I love about that story is the conversations in that issue between Piotr, Kurt, and Kitty. This is three longtime X-Men who have moved on from what their relationships are, and they have to address that. And I don't hate Peter Rasputin the way many other people do. I actually love the character in his flaws. I think I've said before, I love the Kitty Peter relationship because it is so broken. And that makes it interesting to me. And I love that this is the issue where she says, how dare you? And she dresses him down for that, because that shows a lot of growth on her part. And I think, and Kurt has one of my favorite moments in the entire series in that issue, where he just tells Piotr, no, I think of you as a child. And it's harsh, and there's feelings behind it where you go, oh my God, and he's right. It's the I'm not mad, I'm disappointed speech.
Yeah.
And it really does sort of, build their characters for me. And then it also gives you the opportunity to, after all of that, and after how horrific everything of it is, Kurt basically saying, so now I'm going to lie to the professor so that you don't go to jail. And like, after all of that, as mad as everybody is at Piotr, it's like, you're going to be on this team now because you're my little brother and I love you. And I love that moment in the series. So that's the one that sticks out in my head right now.
Good choice. Just in case we lose Andrew, let's do prize draw. You're okay? Well, let's do prize draw anyway. And then I've got like a couple of wrap-up questions that I think will speak to us wrapping up the pod and where we might be going next. So I've got, for some reason, a cowboy hat because it is the hat that I had available. Let's do second place first, which is going to be a custom silkscreen shirt by me. It won't be the
first
book.
place, but okay.
It should definitely be first place. Got all the names in this hat here. We're going to see who we get. All right.
Chris Maverick.
Who is it? It is not. You're not entered to win a prize. Brian Priesman on Twitter. We will be getting in touch with you about your t-shirt. I will be sending you a DM after the episode drops. Now we are drawing for a copy of the best-selling Claremont Run book. Oh my God, so lucky, so lucky. Let's go. Who's going to be the lucky winner? Dun, 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 dun.
Me again.
Still not you, Mav,
Damn
but
it.
it is, I know, a longtime follower of the pod whose question we read, Christian_S, Blue Sky
Nice.
Social. So I will be reaching out to you, Christian.
I'm so sorry, Christian. I hope it's not born.
Oh my goodness.
It's not boring.
I
You
don't know
homework.
Christian, but know Christian from around, and I think that they are going to be very thrilled with that prize. So congratulations to both of you. I'll reach out on those respective platforms to figure out how to get your stuff to you. And thank you so much for your questions. So 2 sort of wrap-up questions to end our holiday special. This is one, we had a couple of similar questions. We had one from Natalie Dan and one from our friend Sue Wisterfield that were kind of similar in terms of like where we would have liked the team to go afterwards. And I think we're going to end up discussing that on the podcast, but I'm going to do Sue's question anyway, which is, where would you have liked the book to go if it hadn't been canceled? And like, I was thinking about this because I originally read it like, I don't know why I read it this way because this is not what you wrote, Sue, but I read it like, well, the book's canceled, but like, where would you like the characters to go if it had still been canceled? Like, would you like it to be a different series or something? Because I have a lot of feelings about what happens to the characters when they go back to the X-Men. It actually reminds me a lot of what's kind of going on in the current books, because these are cycles that happen to X-Men from time to time. But yeah, I thought it would be a fun question to consider. I mean, like, if we're going to write a better comic, where would we have liked these characters to go? I mean, would you want them to still go back to the X-Men just in a different way? I mean, like, what would you
Never.
want for them? What do you think, Mav? No,
Never.
never going back?
I mean, I shouldn't say never. The teams that
Never, but yeah.
I'm perfectly okay with a world where I think we've talked about this. I like the Krakoa era better than some of our other fans do. What I like about the Krakoa era, among other things, and this is also true of like where the Avengers goes, I like for multi-team teams to be able to slide between it. I'm okay with a world where Rain can go from being and can walk out of the pages of X Factor into the pages of Excalibur and be it. So I don't want to say never, but I do, like maybe sometimes, maybe Kitty at some point does go back to the X-Men. That's fine. I do like the idea of a Excalibur team that has come to terms with the fact that they are different than the X-Men, and that's okay. It's in I think our most recent episode that aired, but maybe it was 2 episodes ago because I lose track. But where Piotr has that conversation with Kurt, where he says it's okay for us not to be the X-Men. We do things that matter here, and that is, I want that to be the story. And if the team evolves to where the X-Men, especially at this point in comics, were a paramilitary strike team, and they were going to become more so, especially with like Extreme X-Men coming, which is where Kitty is going to land eventually. And that's not a bad book. I'm not dissing that book at all, but I like that this is the book about this has become the book about a tiny little found family doing tiny little found family stuff, and it becomes a more intimate book. It's one of the things that I like. I'm always very interested in the way that, when written correctly, a book like New Mutants is compared to a book like X-Men, because even once they're grown, like in the more recent incarnations of New Mutants, where they're all adults, they're still just kids who grew up together. And the relationship between, I'm going to pick ones that don't even get along as well. The relationship between Ilyana and Rain, who are not the best of friends, but who understand each other as a sort of bickering, we grew up in the same friend group and this is our relationship, is very different than the relationship between Storm and Psylocke, who met as adults. Or, and the original 5 X-Men, they don't get to have that because they didn't, because it's just a different kind of story and there's only 5 of them. And the later X-Men definitely don't get to have that. So I like that Excalibur can be that sort of team that is a different kind of beast than what the X-Men is. And I would have tried to return to that. Even if I put new characters in, maybe Rain stays along, maybe Douglock comes around, maybe Ilyana comes back, or bring Danny Moonstar in, like whatever, you can swap people out, but I want the concept to be more of a look. We're gonna do our own thing over here. We're gonna find it. It's the West Coast Avengers of what it is.
How about you, Andrew?
I think I would have really liked to see the book move beyond the sort of simulacrum of British culture and go into mainland Europe a little bit more, because I think those cultural clashes would have been very interesting to explore, especially with the different composition of the group and the way that could play off character dynamics. I would have really liked to see that. I think anytime they did go any further east than Paris, Europe is literally a forest or a mountain. like that's it. I think, I don't know, that there would have been something, educational and sort of travel log, like the early Claremont run on X-Men. And as I said, all these really cool opportunities to create cultural conflict within the group. That would have been fun for me. I would have enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, we did have another question about like who would we add to the team, for interest, particularly perhaps in the interest of diversifying the team a little bit. And I don't know. I was thinking of Monet as a character that could potentially do that and give them some different sort of cultures and localities to explore as well, in addition to just being awesome and good at punching things. Yeah, I definitely I get the impulse to have them go back to the X-Men because there's so many relationships there that I have been missing. I mean, Kurt's relationships with Aurora and Logan. I mean, I
Mhm.
love those relationships, and to not have them can be tough, but yeah, things didn't go well for Kitty and Kurt when they went back to the X-Men.
They become
We'll
fourth
talk
screen
about we'll
characters
talk
again.
about it.
I
They
mean,
get
for a while.
regressed a lot. Yeah,
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
really tough to read as an Excalibur fan, and then you get Kurt becoming a priest 2 years after he goes back, which
Is it
is
really only 2 years? Wow.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. So it's tough.
Hmm.
It is tough compared to the sex force context of Excalibur going to
Yeah.
that.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I would have wanted there to be, I don't know where I would have it located, but some sort of like European X-Men team, some team that allows you to kind of talk about the complexity of the mutant metaphor in other cultural contexts and,
Mhm.
have a creative team that could do that justice, not
Hmm.
really having Ben Robb just write people saying bloke and chappy and thinking that means it's British. That would be nice because we haven't had a real sense of authenticity. I mean, we've never had, I mean, as Andrew said, it's always kind of playing with that simulacrum of the UK. So it's not that we've had like a quote unquote authentic version of something. Although, I think Sean Gilmore was talking about this when he was on the pod. There was like a British cultural sensibility to some of the humor in the book early on, which I think
Yeah,
is
very
is
Monty
valid.
Python.
Hmm. And talked about stuff like Dan Dare references and all of that stuff.
Hmm.
But but yeah, I definitely would have wanted there to be an X-Men team that was still sort of off on its own in like one of those other locales. I mean, speaking as a Canadian, Alpha Flight's never really been that for me. Um, but but I've been slagging Alpha Flight a lot
Yeah,
lately. I
slice of
apologize.
life comic Alpha Flight.
Hmm. Anyway, final question, and this is like a tricky one because I know but I did think we'll let people in on some of the convos that we've had about it. So Nick James on Twitter asks, do you all have plans for another deep dive podcast like this after Excalibur, X related or otherwise? And we have talked about it. I guess like I don't want to close anything off. I think that we're pretty set that we're not going to continue with other versions of Excalibur. I mean, not to speak for everybody, but I like I think we all had a particular affection for the Claremont
Yes.
Davis Excalibur, and that is
Sure.
sort of why we did this podcast. And it's
Hmm.
not that we haven't enjoyed other conversations we've had subsequent to that, but
Oh, yeah.
other versions of Excalibur don't have that same place in my heart that would motivate me to spend like 6 to 8 hours a week organizing a podcast about them and editing it and making a website and paying for it and doing all of that stuff. So
I'll say what you're
personally,
not
I'm
saying.
not,
One of them
yeah.
I find quite bad, in fact. But
Yeah,
so, yeah.
well,
So
there's a few of them that,
yes.
we get a continuation of some of Ben Robb's stories, and I've put in my dues. I tried to be nice, and I've been increasingly less nice, but I can't, y'all. I can't. So I feel like to me that's a little bit off the table, and I apologize to anybody who's disappointed about that. But we have talked about various things. We have talked about doing a companion book to the podcast. We've just all been too busy, but we'll see whether we get back to that. I mean, I don't know. There's been various convos that we've had, but
Yeah.
we'll see where we end up. I'm
The
sure we'll
problem.
all end up working together again in
Yeah.
some, because the problem is I'm like I really need, full disclosure, a little bit of a break because this has been a marathon and I
Yeah.
need to focus on a few other things for at least a few months after we wrap this up. But after that, because I'm
I
gonna
was.
miss you guys so
Yeah.
much, I'm sure we'll find ways to work together again.
I'll.
That's what I'll
I'll
miss. I'll
say.
miss the hanging out with you guys, but not so much the editing.
So like. Yeah. I will say. So I've got another show. So you can catch me whenever you want. But my other show is way more loosey goosey than this one, and by design, it's supposed to be like. So my other show is the entire premise of it was this is how my nerdy friends and I are when we hang out at a bar after conferences. Like that's what Vox Pop is supposed to be. There is a lot more prep work that goes into doing an episode of GGW
Oh,
than
yeah.
there is of Vox Pop, and Anna does all of it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if
This
I
is
don't know.
Anna's podcast.
I don't know if
Mav
people
and I are
listening don't
props,
know.
is what I
Yeah, we
say.
show up. Andrew and I show up every week, and
You
I
do.
love the show, but like Anna does the booking. and writes the synopsis, comes up with the schedule, and then edits it after we've recorded. Literally, we're on air talent, and I adore it and I love it, but we can't just
Talent.
yeah, sure. But we can, but it's not something that
For
just,
those on audio, Andrew was doing air quotes.
yes, it's hard to just kind of do. I love this format, and I mean, like I've talked about this. I've talked about this with other people. Like there are other books that I love just as much as this. I could we talked about it on the air. I could easily do one of these for Gen X, Generation X, because I adore the book Gen X.
New Mutants.
Yeah, well, yeah, and oddly enough, with Gen X though, is it's interesting because the person who I think is the best Gen X writer is someone that we
Yeah.
kind of diss a lot on this show, but like his work on that book is absolutely amazing, and I really really adore it. So part of me wants to do that. I am a huge Teen Titans fan, and I could totally go now, so much so that I like, if I were going to do Teen Titans, unlike this book where we started with the best part, and then sort of it's unfortunately got to be downhill after Claremont leaves, because that was like sort of the part, all of our favorite part is the beginning of it, so that it was weird. Whereas Teen Titans, I'll be honest about it, the beginning of Teen Titans is bad. It takes decades for it to actually get good, and I would do all of it. I'd start in the bad part and go all the way all the way
why?
through.
No.
Because I actually think it's interesting.
Perez.
Because no, because I think it's actually interesting. I think that the runs before Perez are actually interesting, but it's so much work to just do this format. I don't know when I would ever actually do that. Like we've or who I'd want to do it with. It's just I know people who do movies by minute podcast. Andrew Dorowski, who is the brother of Joe and John, who've both been on this show. Andrew's not been on the show. He does these Disney movies by minute with his wife Kestra, and I've been on that show. And the amount of intricate work that Kestra Dorowski puts into just researching 1 minute of The Little Mermaid, it's insane, and I can't do that. Like I mean, I've got a PhD and I can't do that, and I mean that quite honestly. So I don't know. Like this is a thing that I could do, but it takes up so much work, and we got jobs, yo. It's like I don't know. So I don't know the answer. I mean, I would love to do it because I actually enjoy this a lot, and I enjoy talking to the two of you every week a lot. Which I'll still do, but it won't be fun for anybody else because, like no one else has the, like if we don't broadcast them. So like, I don't know. Maybe something.
The idea for this podcast came up in a messenger chain, so we'll see
Yeah,
what happens.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things, I don't even want to say it because I don't know that this is going to be what I'm doing, but I've mentioned the She-Hulk book contract on the pod before, and it did occur to me that maybe a companion podcast while I'm working on that project would be something.
Would you start at the beginning, or would you start at Sensational? Same thing. Because
I don't think I'd go issue by issue. I think maybe I'd go groups or story arcs.
Okay.
So there wouldn't be quite so much to cover.
Because Sensational She-Hulk is very similar to this. Sensational She-Hulk, the high point is Byrne's run, and Byrne is a very problematic individual who has a brilliant run on that book that is interrupted a lot earlier than I think people remember it being. It seems like there's a lot more to it than there is.
Yeah, but then he comes back. So
but then he comes back. Yeah. I mean, it's very similar to what we did here is what I was getting at with Davis and Clara. So I could see that. But then also I think there's a lot of, because you got to write a book about it, so you're going to have to deal with the Savage She-Hulk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've read all of it, so we'll see. Anyway, that's something that I wanted people to just sort of look out for in case it happens. For now, I think we are going to wrap up this version of the holiday special, our last holiday special. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And
are you raising your hand?
Make a stupid allegory.
Yeah.
Just related to what we were talking about. I haven't mentioned this to either of you, but I had this in my head because I was raised on TV. Don't read too much into that, and my love of Megan, I'm sure that's not a thing. The analogy that I would make to GGW wrapping up if you ever watch a sitcom where you have like a group of people together for a long time and the show is like the gang and they all get together and talking, the way they always end those stories is that the central character goes and finds a new life with someone else kind of thing.
Mhm.
And I'm like, Anna has this awesome relationship with Adam, who is this amazing person in the X Twitter community. So in my stupid, again, sitcom deformed head, all I'm thinking is I'm just really excited to see what Hannah and Adam could do together, because I think that would be really, really cool.
So do you want her to go off and do Joey? Is that what you're asking for?
No, because that's the side character. Anna is the lead of GGW. We all agree
Okay.
on this. So just like a bigger and better show.
Bigger and better. I don't know about that. I don't see what could possibly be bigger and better than what we've achieved in talking about 126 plus issues of Excalibur with the two of you, but I appreciate that.
Okay.
All right, we will wrap things up there.
That's a complete non-answer for anybody. I can't possibly be satisfied. So the answer is we don't know. Is the like I think that's to answer his question. We'll do something.
Maybe
follow us on Twitter.
Maybe me yelling "Hey hi" in the background of Battle of the Atom for a while. We'll see. Then we'll see what happens after that. So yes, we'll be back. I think next week, unless we take a week off. We'll see how that shakes out. But in any case, the next issue we'll be talking about will be 121, the Sabra issue. We had a great conversation about that. Looking forward to getting that one out in the world. And then we will continue apace with our last few episodes. In the meantime, if you liked what you heard, please follow us, like, and review the podcast wherever you're watching it or listening to it. You can, wow, I was like, I thought I could do this like without looking at it, because like surely I've been saying this outro enough times that I should have it memorized, and yet it's just sounds in my head. You can find us at our website, goshgollywow.com, where we've got some fun extras, and of course via Twitter/X and Blue Sky at goshgollywow, where we're usually posting daily pages and whatever we're reading and more fun extras. Thank you, Mav and Andrew, for another cheerful holiday conversation. What a lovely way to end the year, by hanging out with the two of you for a while and talking one of our favorite comics, even when it's not one of our favorite comics. And as always, special thanks to Maximilian of Thoughtform Music for a truly epic theme song, and an extra special thanks to all of you for your questions. See everybody later. Happy holidays.
Bye. All right.